I'm going to call this meeting to order. My name is Joe McGiverin. I'm chairman of the Holyoke City Council's Finance Subcommittee. To my far right is our president, Todd McGee. To my next right is Mike Sullivan, city councilor at large. To my first left is Peter Tallman, city councilor at large. And the vice chair of the committee, city councilor Jim Leahy at large. We have only a few items tonight, but they're all important. And the one request I have of the committee is we have someone in the audience tonight who is on paternity leave. You know, a brand new father. Can you imagine that, Terry? You know, also joining us is our Ward 2 councilor, Terry Murphy. Ian, if there's no objections, we'll take item number 5 up real quick.
Motion to take up item number 5.
All those in favor? Any opposed?
So
Marcus, the committee likes you at the moment, so come in here and sell us why this is a great grant. For the record, Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, this hereby accepts the provisions of the fiscal 2019 MHC Survey and Planning Grant, authorizing the establishment of a fund and or other appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you brought with you a new member?
Yes, new member of the Office of Planning and Economic Development, Ben Murphy, who joins us most recently from Develop Springfield and has significant historical preservation experience.
Ben, welcome to the chambers of the Holyoke City Council. Whatever you heard is true, but we will go easy tonight for the first time and only the first time.
I also told him you'd say that, probably.
Marcus, if you could run us through this, and I think you know what to highlight and how much we're getting, and of course, if there's any matching monies required.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the committee for taking this up in a timely manner, and obviously for helping me jump the queue here so I can get back home. This grant is part of an action step that really started with, as many things in our office, with a plan. In 2017, we completed the historical preservation plan update. The city's last historic preservation plan dated from, I believe, the early 90s. And in that plan, most of the center city was missing, particularly the Flats and South Holyoke. So one of the action steps in that plan was to take additional steps, particularly for surveying in those neighborhoods. In late 2018, early 2019, we applied then for this survey and planning grant to the Massachusetts Historical Commission. It's a $10,000 grant, which we were awarded. It does require a dollar-for-dollar match, so it requires a $10,000 match. Anticipating that we would get awarded, or hoping that we would, we applied for, as a match, to the Community Development Block Grant Program, which we were also awarded in the last round. We were actually awarded $13,000, so we're a little bit overmatched from the minimum requirement, giving us a total budget of $23,000 for the project. What we're aiming to do with this is to survey what we estimate to be around 90 properties in a corridor that's centered around, in your packet, you'll see the last page on the back, there's a map. It goes from Grover Street towards the north, and it follows the spine of Race and Main Streets to the south to about Jackson Street. It does go significantly into South Holyoke, where there are more historic properties that we thought we could get done under the budget that we have available to us. And so, what do we hope to accomplish with this? In your package, you have a scope of work. I don't know if you have the examples there, but the survey and inventory forms is really the first step to any developer's interest in getting subsidies that are of a historic preservation nature, whether that's historic tax credits at the federal, state level, or local level in the case of Community Preservation Act funds. So we see this as a critical step in getting site ready, in providing an avenue to get the type of subsidies that would make up for the development gap. And that is something that is commonly done from the public sector side to prepare for private projects in the future. That's the general goal. I would say some of these properties have been surveyed in the past, but the requirements for surveying have changed. So even those that have been surveyed do require an update. This requires research into building characteristics and historical attributes of the architecture or events or people who've occupied the building. Unless I've missed anything, I think that's a general overview of the grant.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, thank you. Nice meeting you as well. Marcos, a few months ago, myself and Sheila Morrow, as being the marketing directors of the PRID, we met with a consultant, and I can't think of his name offhand, but it's somebody that you had hired regarding doing a survey through the downtown area, assessing the needs. Is this similar? Is this the same thing? And do you know who I'm talking about?
I'm not sure what you're talking about, so it's hard for me to say if it's the same thing or not.
Somebody from Vermont. He's a consultant. Came down here for tourism. He said that you hired him.
Yeah, Michael Crane Associates. Yes. Correct. So that's a different project that we're doing a tourism plan for the city of Holyoke, and one of the things that he was doing or has been doing is reaching out to key stakeholders and organizations that are anchors of tourism, bringing people to the city. And of course, the parade committee is one of those. That's why he would have reached out.
So I thought that had something to do with this. So it has nothing to do with this?
No, that is a programmatic plan, right? What kind of things can we do to better bolster the tourism in Holyoke? This grant is very much real estate focused. In the area that you see depicted in the map, it is inventorying every piece of property, and that information would go with the property in order for those properties to potentially be developed with historic preservation funds.
So if we approve this, and when we approve this, will we get some sort of overview or some sort of presentation on exactly what has happened and where this money was spent and the outcomes?
Sure, we're happy to do that. We have to report that anyway for the Mass Historical Commission. So whoever wants that report, we can certainly forward it. It's a public document.
Okay, it's actually, I think it's an ordinance now.
Okay.
Myself and a couple other colleagues filed. It actually started with the police department that any time, because they get so many grants. Sergeant Hart is always down here, and he's doing a great job getting grants. But we never hear the end results, not only from the police, the fire, but it would be great for the city councilors to know what's going on. So if we could just get that done, that'd be great.
If it's an ordinance, then the answer is absolutely yes.
I believe it is. I got to double check. All right, thank you.
Marcus, the match looks great in terms of the number. Block grant monies are dwindling year by year, but I understand the project. I certainly am in favor of. My only question is with the match, because it's block grant monies, it's technically federal money that came to the city, we accepted. Is that allowable to use as a match? Is that considered?
Yes. In this case, it is. It's a good question because some grant funds will not allow federal funds to be matched. In this case, it is.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, a few. First, just in terms of the South Holyoke Revitalization Project, I'm assuming this does not create a blockage to the Housing Authority being able to move on their project, right? It might actually be potentially a supplemental incentive.
Right. So I would characterize it as it doesn't. It probably doesn't even affect it one way or the other. To the extent that it would, it's only that the few properties that are around that neighborhood would have a leg up in accessing subsidy funds. But the properties that the Housing Authority are dealing with is vacant land. And so vacant land is not going to be inventoried. It's only standing buildings.
However, and maybe I'm wrong, but I know I've gone to the meetings with the Housing Authority, and there was some indication that if there were buildings that were apartment buildings that could be
Correct.
renovated, that could become part of that project. And
Absolutely.
in this case, I know there are two that are historical, the two on Southeast Street, 632 and 640, because that's where I grew up.
Yes.
So those are very historical buildings.
Yes. So to the extent that the housing authority were to acquire them, then absolutely, this would help that. Yeah.
And then they would, if they were considered to be historical, then they would have to follow
Yes.
this guideline.
Those buildings will be inventoried, absolutely.
Okay, and then just, and this goes into the flats, because I've been to a meeting down there, and Center Street, I know Center Street is, I think, considered historical already, right? Center Street from
yes,
Canal to Lyman, I think.
Correct. It's a district that's already in the National Register, so that's why we didn't really go into them.
Okay,
there.
so let me just in terms of this, because there's sidewalk, and I've got an order in that signed with Councilor LeBron Martinez a couple weeks ago, because there's sidewalks, which are brick sidewalks, and I think have also been historically classified, were in dire need of repair. So would this provide funding to do those kind of things eventually, or potentially?
My understanding that the historic preservation funds are mostly for
Buildings?
inside the property line. I don't think that they could apply to the right of way, but I would have to look into whether the right of way would be classified as being able to accept. Yeah, could you put historic tax credits or something like that towards the right of way? I don't know.
Okay. And just one last thing would be on Hamilton Street. I know looks like to me you're ending in the alley between Bridge and Summer. And I'm just wondering why we have not extended Hamilton Street down. I mean, some of those buildings down on Hamilton near South Canal and at the alley between Summer and South Canal.
Yeah.
I would think I know they've been there a long time. I don't know if there's any historical significance, but it would seem to me like that would be a natural extension.
Yep. So you're seeing the end product of something that was actually much slimmer. The original map, the proposal actually went around to Clemente Street only. So we're just taking a north-south corridor, and we were going by a general estimate, and by once we were awarded the funds and we were putting the scope of work together with the Mass Historical Commission, they indicated to us that the sort of a going rate that we should be working with would be a little bit cheaper, and so we should be able to accommodate more properties. So we were working with a number given by the Mass Historical Commission and said, okay, what can we add that seems most impactful and historic? And so if we're going by the main north-south corridor of Main Street, we're going not only into the neighborhood, but we said, well, we could also capture as many historic buildings on at the Cabot Street corridor as well. So that's why it looks a little bit gerrymandered that way, because originally none of that was there.
Okay. And one last question relating to Providence Ministries, which is obviously in the block between Hamilton and Cabot and off Clemente and Southeast Street. I know they're looking, and I would think, Kate's Kitchen, which is the former convent for the nuns, and I think it's Loretto House, that's the one that used to be directory for the priest. And I believe that church was built somewhere in the vicinity of the late 1800s or early 1900s, so I'm kind of thinking they might qualify in terms of that, but as a nonprofit, are they eligible to get those kind of things?
You can, so it's a shell game. You can create an LLC that gets the tax credit, and ultimately, selling them to a private entity so that you can monetize it. So yeah, there are ways.
So there's potential that they could get some.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I might, Ben, right? With a great last name, so welcome.
Councilor Sullivan.
Hey, thanks. Just helping us, Marcos, the CDBG matching funds, that can be used for consulting?
Yes. So that goes towards there's a portion of the CDBG funds that can go either for admin or planning. So, for example, the OCD office is classified as administration. So that comes from that allowable bucket. So it goes to planning efforts.
Okay, because I don't recall seeing 13,000 in the CDBG budget for this project at all. Is that surplus funds, or where's that really coming from?
I don't know the internal workings of OCD. I know that we have an award letter for 13,000. Maybe it was surplus from another year. I don't know.
That's it.
Did you say it was part of their administrative budget?
Well, there's several categories in,
Yeah.
in CDBG, and so usually a big part of the funds aren't used for planning purposes because it's administration and planning is, I think, one big category, and the Office of Community Development is already, all their budget comes from administration and planning. So funds that they could dedicate to planning is actually very little. I don't know if it comes from their like office budget or if it comes from surplus funds from another year. Honestly, I'm not sure because those inner workings I'm not as familiar with.
Yeah, no, because it was part of the office budget, I call administrative budget. It wouldn't show as a line item necessarily. It would show as a project, but as part of their administrative costs that small percentage they can use.
Right.
Anything else from the committee?
Make a motion to approve it.
Motion made, second to approve. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Marcus, I think you know we meet the first Tuesday in September. We will report to the full city council our findings this evening with a recommendation to accept the $10,000 grant.
Thank you.
And once again, congratulations, and don't expect that favor again, okay?
I'll have no more kids, so.
And looking around, seeing there's nobody else in the audience on paternity leave, we're going to go on a course according with the order of the agenda.
Have a good night.
Our second item will be our first item, which is charter school spending tuition. I think it's an appropriation. I don't know if it's by transfer or by initial appropriation and transfer, but Anthony Soto is with us from the school department. If you would come in, the chair will entertain a motion to take it off the table for discussion.
Motion to take item number 1 off the table for discussion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anthony, come on in, have a seat. Anthony, we're going to ask you to explain the whole project, but just for logistical purposes, do you have a copy of what's been presented to us? I know it goes through the auditor's office.
Do.
Okay,
I provided it to the auditor and she passed it on.
okay. Because, does this involve new monies through Chapter 70?
This is new money, so as you may or may not be aware of, when we presented the budget back in June, we had used the House's version of the budget. There's been a lot of rallying around Chapter 70 reform, funding reform. Late July was probably the latest I've ever received final numbers from the governor's office and the state finally passing their budget. But it was really tied to this Chapter 70 reform. So as a result, the governor finalized the budget and it went to conference committee and it was approved, and there was more money added to Chapter 70. And this is just coming to the committee asking to adjust our appropriation to reflect the state's final budget.
The record is December, and December was a negative number, so we'll take a plus number anytime, whether
Yeah.
it's July is fine.
Right.
But the 36,716, is that new monies, or is that part monies that you anticipate?
So the 36,716 is a reduction of our charter tuition expenses. So when we look at the cherry sheet numbers that the state releases, we look at Chapter 70 revenue coming in, and then we look at cherry sheet items that are eligible for net school spending. 2 of them are school choice tuition and charter tuition. The House's numbers are different than what the state finally passed. So in essence, what happened is we get Chapter 70 money, and we got to pass money along to other districts where kids that live in Holyoke, they're choicing out to other districts. That $2,772,000 is what we have to pass on to other districts. So there was an increase of $331,000 for that, and then for kids that live in Holyoke that are attending charter schools, our expense went down from what we initially projected in our appropriation by $36,000. So we're projecting to pay about $1,522,000 for, to the charter schools out of our appropriation. Does that answer your question, or did I?
It does, and, well, it doesn't. I think we're
Okay.
gonna have to work with the auditor, who's not here this evening, which is fine, she wasn't invited, on if we got this in the correct format. I think it answers what you're doing.
Okay.
And I think, we'll have a good discussion in a second, but I think we may have to adjust it by our next meeting. Just a reminder, everybody, the new monies would have to come through and accepted by the city council as an initial appropriation, because they weren't in the cherry sheet.
Correct.
At the beginning of the year, and they weren't in the budget because they were unknown when we did the budget in June. Because the city schools are in receivership, the school committee has no, I don't want to say no, they have a voice, but they have no vote over these type of items. So the city council has been taking the votes to make sure that we don't have line item control, but we're taking votes to make sure that things are going along as planned, as presented, and of course, the need to, to accept the additional monies. So with that in mind, Anthony, is there anything more you want to add to this, or are you ready for questions?
No, I would just say that it's, we're getting an extra 1.7 million. I did say, when I did present the budget initially, that this is the most I've ever seen done in terms of fixing the foundation budget and the flaws, and this was actually a very surprising but refreshing change from what we've experienced the last 13 years. This budget could have been really bad, but we were able to sustain what we had. And I will say that Dr. Shrike has already spent this, he didn't already spend it, but he already presented.
You can say that, that's okay.
He already presented a plan to the school committee on what he plans on doing with this additional money, but it's mainly to address class size issues. We were really aggressive in budgeting because we had to be. There were some cuts made. We budgeted very tight when it comes to class sizes. So where we had concerns, we were able to provide it. We're hoping to be able to provide additional resources so that schools are ready and class sizes are maintained at a level that's appropriate.
Anthony, just to clarify, or just to make sure I'm got the right understanding, so please correct me if I'm wrong. When you say Chapter 70s have been, it's an adjustment to Chapter 70s. It's a refreshing adjustment. But the new monies went across the board to every community in the Commonwealth, more or less.
Well, assuming they had a similar demographic to us, I think they were more generous to communities like Holyoke that have
That was going to be the second part.
higher low-income populations,
Yes.
higher ELL populations.
But my understanding is there still is a conference or advisory committee that is looking at the Chapter 70 formula to make the permanent adjustments. So it's not just because the state has extra money this year and doing the right thing. It's going to dictate how Chapter 70s should fairly be distributed, recognizing gateway communities and low-income communities and the demographics. But that still hasn't been completed, I believe.
Yeah, what the governor proposed and what's in these numbers is year one of a 7-year plan to continue to increase funding to schools like Holyoke and communities like Holyoke, where studies have shown that we've been underfunded in serving the populations that we serve. They recognize that finally, and they're implementing it. If it was a full implementation, we'd be looking at an extra $19 million based on what was recommended to in that report, that Foundation Budget Review Committee report. So this is year one. They say, hey, okay, we're going to fix this, but we're not going to fix it in 1 year. We're going to do it over a 7-year period. So it's very I've been in education for the last 13 years, and this is the first time I actually see an increase in revenue. Not, every year since I've been here in Holyoke, we've had to cut $4 million every year out of our budget. This year, we would have had to cut $7 million had this additional revenue not come in. And this is on top of, we ended up getting an extra $5 million in Chapter 70 from what we got last year with relatively flat revenue. So in other years, had nothing been done, that would have equated to, probably a decrease in funding or a very slight minor increase in funding, but we ended up getting an extra $5 million from last year to this year. The House's numbers reflected 4. The final ended up turning out to be closer to 5.
Thank you. Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for this positive news. That's a good thing. Since today was the first day of school, one of the things that you just had said made me think. What is an adequate size class?
So it depends on the grade. So we have what we call a staff allocation, and we look at, I believe, from grades. In the kindergarten grades, it's up to 18 students is kind of the max. So we try to stay around 18. If it hovers around 20, there's some concerns, but if it's manageable, depending on staffing at the building and who the teachers are, we can manage. But then when you get so I think kindergarten to 3rd grade, you get into a no more than 23, or kindergarten to 5th grade. Then 6th to 8th grade, we want no more than 26, and then at the high schools, we want no more than 29 to 30. So it just depends on what grade levels. We look at each grade at every school, and we try to stay within the target ratios. So there's a minimum and a maximum.
Is this a standard number throughout the Commonwealth?
It's not a standard number. It's I mean, if you go to Bridgeport Bridgeport down and I'm sorry if I'm forgetting the community, but like they have 36 kids per classroom.
How is that manageable for any teacher or any?
It's
I mean,
not.
I can't imagine 30 students in high school is manageable.
Yeah, it's tough.
There were 18. I can't imagine. I have 3 small children, and I can tell you right now, it's like herding cats.
Yeah.
With 3 of them, I can't imagine having 18 in the classroom.
So New Bedford is what I was thinking about. They have huge class sizes. They've had to lay off a bunch of teachers and a bunch of staff. Luckily, we're not in that. We're not quite there yet. If funding continued to go at the trend it was, we would have been in that position.
We don't need to lay off because people are leaving the community and going to other schools.
Right.
So we're losing great teachers through almost like attrition. But my questions aren't that. My questions are, just so if a constituent asks me, how much a year do we spend on the charter schools?
So it's 12.5 million this upcoming year.
Okay, and how much does the city, do the taxpayers of this great city, spend on people who opt out and go to other communities for school choice?
2.7 million, 2.8 million.
2.8. And how much does the city pay for busing out of the, not talking about busing in the community, but busing students outside the community?
For school choice or charter schools?
Do we have to pay for that too?
We don't.
Oh, no, I didn't think so. But for homeless students, we do.
For homeless, we spent about $1 million last year, which was very expensive, and I'm
Do you see that
looking at
going in this
ways.
year?
I see that going down this year.
Okay.
We're really trying to be more. We're being very strategic, and I think there was a misconception historically that if you were a homeless student, you automatically had to go on a van with van pool and pay a separate rate. And what we're doing is changing that this year. We have some of our kids can ride on big buses. Some of them can ride on existing mini buses. And we're really thinking outside the box because we have to. Those costs need to be managed, and we're doing everything we can to be very strategic and not be closed-minded about like, okay, homeless population needs to ride on these minivans.
I hear you.
And separate, like we're integrating them with the kids. So if we have a bus that's available that we're already paying for, we're sending them to pick up kids.
So just in the top 3, so buses, school choice, and charter school, we're spending about $16 million a year. And I understand we have no control of that, but that's just kind of an eye-opening thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Councilor Murphy?
So, I just want to make sure I understand the transfer. I'm certainly not opposed to it. So we're basically saying we need more money for school choice tuition, and we're going to provide more money for personal services. But the only thing I'm seeing, and you may have more paperwork there than I'm seeing, is that there's a transfer from the charter school tuition. Is the rest of it just the additional
Revenue.
chapter 70?
Yeah.
So what was that additional amount?
So we're getting an extra $1,788,325. 1.3 of that is chapter 70, and 482,000 of that is additional charter reimbursement from what was built into the original appropriation.
Okay,
Because
so
we-
1.3 million was chapter 70.
Yep,
And what was the charter reimbursement?
482,000. So when we built the budget and we presented the budget, it was based on lower chapter 70, lower charter reimbursement. So in essence, it's not really a transfer, it's an increase, it's additional revenue and correcting the original appropriation with the correct cherry sheet revenues.
So just make, so in effect, the original budget of $12,559,000 for charter school reimbursement goes up by 480, but because of that, we can take 36,000 out of that.
So school choice is going up 331,008.
Right.
So the revenue is going up 1.7 million.
Right.
But out of that revenue, the school department can't just spend all of it. They have to increase what they have to give for school choice, which is 331. And then we got to decrease what we initially had for charter schools, which is a decrease of 36,000. So, ideally what we would do is, I would love to have that whole 1.8, but we got to pay our bills. So that
Sure.
part of the cherry sheet is not just the chapter 70 numbers, but it's like, okay, this is how much chapter 70 is going up. But in addition, these are the changes that we made that you're going to have to pass through to charter schools and school choice districts. So choice happened to go up, charter happened to go down slightly. But overall, the net impact to our operating budget, to the school department's operating budget, what we can keep in district is about 1.5 million.
So I don't want to be, I'm an old man trying
Sorry.
to figure out the math here, so. So you said there was 482,000 additional charter school reimbursement, correct?
Charter reimbursement, correct.
So that would go on to 56513, the charter school sending tuition, I assuming. So that would be added to that, and because of that, we have 36,000 that we can transfer out? Am I reading that correctly?
Did you guys get this memo that I prepared?
No, you wouldn't.
Well, it's attached to the order, but not everybody got it.
Yeah.
Oh,
The clerk's office in,
Just to let them know, and I think this might clear it up, so the order before us says, from 18202-56513, charter school spending tuition, $36,716. It says
Okay.
total 1.788. Two, so you're saying you're taking 36,000 and giving it to personal services, 1.5, but it said 1.493. School choice spending, 33822, so the numbers aren't lining up.
Yeah, I'm
That's
sorry.
what I'm trying to figure out.
I provided a,
Pushing the
if,
money to
if
what
you look at Anthony's sheet,
Yeah.
it makes more sense.
okay.
And now that you explained it, it makes a lot more sense.
Thank you so
And this
much.
is something new, I think, to any auditor, this is kind of something new, it just doesn't happen.
Oh,
We're gonna have to readjust what you see on the agenda.
Okay.
We're gonna have to ask the auditor and mayor, because we can't amend it, to readjust it so we can vote on it in the correct format. But essentially, because we got 1.8 something million dollars of new monies, it made an adjustment to charter schools, which made another adjustment, which we now have to do the dominoes effect. And Anthony's putting the whole thing in front of us so we can accept the money for the first time, and then they can do what they're doing with it. Because, like I said, because we're in receivership, the school committee
Yeah.
will look at this, but they can't really vote on it.
I apologize for the confusion. I laid it out in a memo and when I submitted it to the auditor, and because I don't want to confuse people with this, and it is very confusing. It's not typical that something like this happens.
Ryan, if you could make copies of this for everybody? Sure, I'll do it now. Can you do it now? That'd be great.
So can I just ask that, so again, you got 482,000 more for charter school reimbursement. So does that 482 start off getting added to the 12,559,000? And then because of that, you got 36,000 left? So in effect, our charter school tuition would actually be more like close to 13 million? Would that be correct, or is that
No,
12,500?
our charter school tuition, when we presented the budget, was
Yeah.
12,559,000.
Right.
The new numbers are 12,522,000, so it's less. So these expenses are part of net school spending. And then our school choice tuition, what we would owe other districts
Right.
for kids that are living in Holyoke, going to Chicopee,
Sorry.
going to Springfield. Initially, when we developed this budget, it was 2,440,000, and that was based on the house's numbers.
Mm-hmm.
That number is now 2,772,000. So out of the new revenue that we're getting, we have to plug that deficit, because that would have created a deficit if we don't update our numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Then the rest of it we can keep.
Okay.
Well, short of, decreasing charter tuition.
Okay. Okay, I think.
We'll get copies,
Yeah.
not just for everybody here, but for the city council, so you can look at
Exactly.
it before,
Yeah.
what do we say? Tuesday, not next week, but week after? No, it is next week, right?
Next week, yeah.
I'm sorry, Tuesday the 3rd.
And if anybody has any questions on any of this stuff, I'd be happy to sit down one-on-one. I think this memo explains it.
Was filed before, so Thursday it has to be filed to meet the deadline. Monday's a holiday.
Okay.
So it has to be filed Thursday by 12, the new order just
Okay,
correctly.
okay.
So what'll happen is, this will have to be denied because it's not correct. Only knowing that Tuesday it'll be on the agenda, as long as we get it in by Thursday, the correct format.
Yeah. So we'll use our discussion tonight for denying this, but with the understanding a replacement will be there by Tuesday.
You have. Can I see what you have? Oh, sorry. Thank you.
As Ryan's making copies, are there any more discussion or any more questions?
No? Make a motion to deny it?
Motion to deny.
Second.
Of course, the understanding that we're going to have a replacement for us by Tuesday, and the full city council will have the option to vote on the replacement. We will report our findings to the full city council and make sure they have copies of what Ryan is making now, so it makes more sense. It's good news. Good news overall.
Yes.
I mean, we don't all agree with charter school monies. We don't all agree with, well, I'll stop. I don't want to say I don't agree with school choice, but we do understand the importance of Chapter 70s, especially to a gateway community. And I hope that 7-year plan is solidified, so we know it's going to be a 7-year plan and not just an annual, oops, we got some extra money, but that we are recognized as, additional needs because of what we do in terms of servicing poverty. The poverty, Mr. Murphy, which we did not create, it comes to us. And I think Holyoke does a fine job of serving it, but the spending and the monies to pay for the service needs to come from across the board, not just from one community. That's the editorial. Okay, Chair will
Sound like
entertain
the
a
whole
motion.
transcript.
I made a
But
motion.
motion made and
Second.
seconded to
Second.
deny with the understanding that we'll have a replacement order at the full city council meeting. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony, and
Good night, sir.
I'll ask Ryan to contact Tanya tomorrow, but if you could follow up, do you get the gist of what we're saying? Okay.
By Thursday.
Yeah. It was
confusing,
but thank
right?
you. You cleared it up real quick, and we appreciate that.
He's gotta get it by Thursday though, right?
Yeah, we gotta do this by Thursday because Monday's a holiday. Okay. She's, you know what? I know Tanya, she's listening at home. Thanks.
Take care.
Item number 2.
Make a motion to take item number 2 off the table?
So moved. Item number 2 is an order that hereby be appropriated by transfer 2020 $16,540 from Energy Gas Oil Electric to $605 computer coordinator, $1,125 children's librarian, $1,150 assistant library director, $6,410 library director, 4,650 library assistant, and 2,600 library assistant evenings. The total is 16,540. Bria, please come in. Oh, it seems like you were just here.
Here, she was.
You were. Thanks.
Did you put me on your list, Joe? Just put me on your list.
What?
Put me on your list.
Is your thing on? Is your mic on? There you go.
On? Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think we caught what you said, but could you just explain where the money's coming from? And then talk about why there's a need to, so quick into your year, which you and I just had a discussion, but so quick into your year, why there's a need to put this monies in these line items?
Well, last time I was here to justify our request for the appropriation, because we need some money, the 2.5% increase according to the state aid grant, we put that money into gas and electric, which we always go over than the regular appropriation. And we talked that maybe there was going to be a time that I would have to come back and do some transfer because I couldn't put money into the personnel because it was not in the ordinance. By doing that, I oversaw that there were 4 employees that, according to the ordinance of employee must have a minimum of 5 years in position to be eligible for the Supermax. I realized there are 4 employees that are scheduled this year for the Supermax. We're at the 4th step, so now we qualify for the Supermax according to the ordinance. And therefore, we decided that taking money from the gas and electric, so it's no new money, the money's already been approved. Just move it so we can cover for those increase for those people.
So the gas and electric, which I know I have right here,
It was
is
94,460 or 450, something like that.
And that's your budget,
That was
In your budget,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what was approved last in the budget.
okay. And I know sometimes those are estimated numbers, not knowing what type of year weather-wise we're gonna have, but you're comfortable that is
We'll end up with about 77 something with the gas and electric. And that is kind of one of the only places that we can pay with endowment private funds if we need to, but I can't do that with the personnel. Because if it's not in the ordinance, I can't pay, and we don't have payroll in the library because it's being taken care of by the city. So that's why by transferring the money from the gas and electric to the personnel, if I'm short in the gas and electric, we can take care of that. I don't have to come back for more money.
While you're sitting here and seeing you mentioned it, how much is in the endowment fund?
Last time I heard it was 6 point something million. And we are only allowed to take the interest. So every year we get about 130,000 from the endowment to complement what the city gives us.
Okay,
And then the state aid also supplement the budget.
so each of these line items is a salary increase.
As per the ordinance.
As
yes.
per the ordinance, is it contractual also?
We don't have contract.
You don't have contracts. And before we open up to questions, seeing I'm hogging all the questions here,
Yes.
you just mentioned something to me in the hallway that you've recently lost 2 employees, and you think it's a salary-related issue that's been ongoing?
Yes.
explain that?
Just after I put this request, I got a resignation letter for the library assistant that covers the children's room in the evenings. He went from the 11.53 that we pay him an hour to double. So he took that position, so he left. So now I'm stuck that I need somebody to cover the children's room in the evening. And just today on my way here, I hear that my youth librarian, the young adults librarian, is also resigning. She got another offer that will give her $45,000, and we're only paying her about 38 something. And there's a third one in the works that he will probably also be leaving because of the increase. The pay rate is not compatible.
I said to you, this is not indicative just of the library.
Yep.
This happens in other departments,
Yeah,
even at different levels, like even department
It's
heads.
just that this year is hitting the library a lot faster. I mean, like 2 weeks between one and the other one is probably also coming.
And I did see not too long ago a study, and our salaries are some of the lowest library-related salaries in the entire Commonwealth. It's incredible how you do what you do. Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, thank you. On that, so some of these numbers aren't that significant, $600, but then we go down to $6,400. Is that you, the library director?
Yeah.
And so what's your salary now?
I'm in the 52,000 something, 230 or 80.
And so that'll bring it up to add additional 6,400.
That would take me to the super max.
Yep. And so the library assistant, what's the assistant at?
The library assistant, he's currently fourth step, $38,208.
And he's the person that resigned?
He's probably in the work.
Okay, so that position's opened?
No, it's not open yet, but he's the third one that might be on his way out.
All right, so let me ask you this. Why did you budget so high for the energy and oil and gas and electric? I mean, $16,500, that seems to be a lot of money.
There's for the library to be able to qualify and be certified and get the state aid money, there's a requirement that municipal appropriation have to be the average of the first 3 years plus another 2.5%. That 2.5% increase, I cannot put it in the personnel, which is what mostly is covered, because it's not in the ordinance.
Sure.
So therefore, the only place for us not to be losing the state aid and still qualify is for the city to give us that magic number appropriation, so we do not go below it. And it was approved that way with the understanding that if we didn't use it, the city would get it back.
Okay, all right, that's it for me, thank you.
Any other, Councilor Tomlin?
Yeah, just a quick question. Thanks, Maria. So taking that, and I'm looking at the budget here, the 94,400, and it jumped up from whatever it was, 72,000 or whatever. I understand you had to put that, the city had to put that money there to get to.
For the bottom line.
It's the bottom line. If you didn't, you wouldn't have the extra funding from the state. So now, with this money gone from there, you're down to 78,000, which is more in line. Will you be, even if you go lower now, will you be able to?
For the gas and
budget,
electric?
for the budget, for the year? 'Cause
For the
it's,
gas and electric, if we, with the 70,000 that we have there, thanks to the appropriation, if we go over that extra that I'm going to need, I can use private funds, whether it's the state aid or donations or anything to pay for it.
Oh, you
But I
can, okay.
cannot do the same for the employees.
for the employees. Okay, so in other words, in like March, if you're short 20,000, you can take the money from another fund.
Yes. And
Not come back to
yeah,
the city.
I don't have to
Okay.
come back to the city.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McGee?
Are we gonna get that same 94,000 each and every year, so that extra 2.5% we'll get every year? Or is that just for this year?
It all depends if you change the ordinance.
Yeah.
Well, that's my whole point.
Yeah, if
So
you
we-
change the ordinance that we can do it on the,
Gas and electric, to then take from it, to put it into salaries, which we know we can't put that money into salaries. But if we don't get it next year, how are we gonna make up the 16,540?
no, because that's what's going, whatever this add up in the personnel, that is what I will be asking next year for the personnel.
You can add that in to get the 2.5%.
No, because it's the 3 years average plus another 2.5% increase.
That's my whole point, where you get.
Yeah. So, well,
For salaries.
not unless you change the ordinance. If you change the ordinance for the personnel, I know. So, but if let's say they come and say, okay, approve the salary study, that's going to give you some steps or anything like that, then that will probably help. But as it's written now,
If we don't approve the salary study, it doesn't get approved, and we approve this though, are we now potentially gonna lose the 16.54 for next year because we didn't approve the salary study?
no, because I will ask for it again next year.
And what if we don't get it? Then now the city's on the hook for the 16,540.
But that will be in the personnel.
It'll be in there though, next year, that budget, right?
Because it will be at that increase.
It's not in the budget this year. You're taking it
Right.
from another line item to put it in there. That's the whole point. That's exactly the problem here. You're taking from this one, which you know you didn't need the excess. You're pushing it into a line item that wasn't properly budgeted for. So next year, you are obligated to pay that salary, and you're not gonna be able to go into the other fund to put it back in. It's a shortfall. It's backwards. That's not how you do a budget. I want the salary study approved. I've said it time and time again.
Yeah, I know.
I want you to get those raises.
I know.
This is what hurts our budget.
Maria, when's the last time your position got a salary increase?
5 years ago.
And the rest of these positions,
5 years ago.
5 years ago? And if I remember the salary study, which is unfortunately under lock and key in some other committee, most of these positions here would have been automatically qualified for increases because of what I said earlier, that the salaries across the board in the library are the lowest in the Commonwealth. And that person that resigned was under minimum wage at $11.53.
Yeah.
And yet we have a committee that keeps the salary study locked in it. If I was a member of that committee, I'd be embarrassed. That's an editorial comment, Councilor Murphy.
You're like the Hoyle Transfer Telegram today.
I know, we gotta bring them back.
I make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Motion made and second to approve this transfer. With all due respect to Councilor McGee's comments, I'm in favor because we have no other choice, in my opinion, because we're being held hostage by a committee.
Oh, I have no problem. I'll approve it because I want them to get their salary. I'm just telling you, it's the wrong way to do it.
You're making a good point.
That is the key. It should come out of committee and be voted on to give them what they're entitled to, which is a proper salary. This is the wrong way to do it because you will now potentially have, if we can fix it, a 16,500 shortfall that's not coming back in. That's what's on the record.
I agree with you 100%. Any other discussion? On the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0.
I thank
Maria,
you.
thank you.
I thank you all.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Marie.
September 3rd. Some other people you might want to call. You're going to need at least 3 of them.
4 of them? 4?
Need 9.
9, 4.
Item number 3.
Make a motion to take up item number 3 off the table for discussion.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? This is an order of compliance of Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City of Hoyoke accepts the Veterans Heritage Grant Program additional fundings, authorizing the establishment of a fund and or other method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. On the motion to take off the table has been passed. We have with us our Director of the Veterans Affairs Department, and Jesus, we welcome you. Could you just run us through the grant, and then we'll open it up to questions?
Sure, good evening, and thanks for having me. Back in April of 2018, Councilor Sullivan, Bartley, and Talman put in an order that was passed, received and adopted, to remove the plaques that are in the armory and have them relocated to the World War Memorial. The order just asked for storage, and we're looking to try to get them displayed again at some point. But the truth of the matter is that the building department, through its demolition money, was going to do the work anyhow. Mid-year this year, I got a call from the Mass State Historical Records Advisory Board saying they had another $5,870 that we can apply for to help for this particular project. I put in the application along with some notices to the Historic Commission, and they were all approved. So we're waiting for just the City Council to approve the receipt of this money. There is matching where we're going to pay it anyway. Money is waiting to be used.
How much is the match?
This grant could pay up to 50% of the total project. The project without display, just storage, was $8,000. $8,500 was the quote. But if we asked them to go ahead and reassemble the plaques and display, it'll be a little bit more than that. They're already talking, they're going over budget because of the mortar wasn't exactly what they expected, and they're taking longer. So the original quote is probably going to get blown by.
Let me back up. Do we have a dollar figure for this grant?
$5,870.
And then we have to match it dollar for dollar?
You have to match it dollar for dollar.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. I'm anticipating questions next Tuesday, so I just want to make sure I have it right.
But you have the money for the
Match?
Yes. So the building department got the original quote for, I think it was $8,500. They set that money aside. It's already taken care of either by encumbered, I think it was encumbered from last year's budget. So the money's there. So what this does, it gives us to about $14,000 to work with altogether. Because before we were just going to store it at the War Memorial. Now we have some more funds. Maybe we can put it back together and display it in the hallway or something.
And these are those, where do we see them? There's some up right now.
They're limestone, 7 foot by about 4 foot, 5 foot, and they're inside the armory currently.
Okay. I know I saw one somewhere.
Yeah.
Counselor Sullivan?
Yeah, just to help clarify that, I believe that what's happening here is the money that was set aside is somewhat less than the quote that we received. So we're a little short there. Also, as far as other people willing to do it and willing to quote it, there weren't a lot because of the nature that they are limestone and they crack very easily. There was liability problems and stuff like that. Nobody really wanted to undertake it. They're built right into the wall of the building. And then, like Jesus said, the only plan at that point was to leave them in crates. It was to protect these limestone slabs from the potential of any further collapse or potential demolition problems with the building. If it just goes into demolition mode, they're just going to be rubble on the ground. So,
Any further discussion? Motion made and second to approve. All set. On discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0 to accept the grant and understanding that the dollar for dollar matching funds is already in the budget.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jesus.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Item number 4.
Motion to take item number 4 off the table for discussion?
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved. This is the Master General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A. The City Council accepts the provisions of the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency grant. Authorizes the establishment of fund and or other method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources association with the administration of said grant. Taken off the table for discussion, we have Captain Pratt with us this evening. David, do you want to run us through the grant and, of course, tell us if there's any matching obligations?
I'll
And
start
how much
right
the
out.
grant is?
At the front, there is no matching. It's a smart board for the police department, primarily for training, but it also is going to it's compatible with the one that they have at the fire department currently, and can be used for, to set up like a command center for emergency situations. So, and we can link with the fire department, so we can both be looking at the same thing, or ours could be used as a backup command center in case theirs went down, or vice versa.
So theoretically, if I could,
Councilor Leahy.
say if there's like a reservoir, something was happening at one of the reses, you could pull up the res, fire department, police department could both be looking at the same thing, and so tactically, you guys could be making decisions based on.
Correct, correct. Currently, we would jump in our cars and go over to the fire station, and now we'll be able to, do it. I mean, we might still do that if it's a,
Sounds like,
command post thing, but quicker, we can all be on the same page. And for training purposes, it's gonna enhance our training as well.
Councilor Tomlin.
Yeah, thank you, Captain Pratt. What is the cost, or what is the total of the grant?
$5,091.39.
And has this been purchased yet, or will be purchased soon with that money, the smart board?
Correct, soon.
Soon? Because we did see the one, I think, a few years back. I think we had a tour of the fire department when they had that smart board. It's very, efficient. It really worked well with the city, and I think it's an important tool that you could link up with the fire department with this. And training, you're talking about like the police department, you'll have it in a certain area.
It'll be upstairs in the roll call room where we do
all
the
your-
majority of our training, yes.
Okay, and then they'll utilize that for training too, all the time?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion from the committee? David, I've seen I have actually, as a member of the parade committee, been at the fire department when that entire system is used, and I know you've been there. It's incredible what you can
Yeah.
do. And I think this is a wonderful grant for the city and then the police department. Years ago, a young lady, Elaine Puda, said that we should have combined our public safety centers together, and I think her wisdom was years ago, and no one listened to her. But it would have been something, I think, if we just put the police and fire together at some point, dispatch, emergency management, and things like this. But the cooperation between both departments is there, and that's what counts.
Exactly.
This is a
Technology is bringing us together.
Oh, it's incredible.
Motion to accept the
Motion made, second to accept the
Second.
grant. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Okay.
Next Tuesday, you'll certainly can watch us on TV, and we'll relay all your the requests to the city council and answer all their questions. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
I'll second that.
Adjourned. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned.